Welcome to musicstudios.co.nz. We are in Hamilton today with Soul Studios.
Hello.
With Matt.
Hey.
How's things, Matt?
Very good.
Awesome to be here. We're very excited to be in Hamilton today. Wow, what a space. This is great.
It's fun. I like it.
Yeah?
It does the thing that I want it to do. So.
What are you doing in this space? What are you up to? With projects?
Nowadays, mostly recording my own stuff, so my own music, that sort of jazz, and any corporate work and voiceover work that comes along, that sort of jazz.
Yeah.
I was, for a very long time, about 10 years, recording bands and individual musicians and that sort of thing, but I kind of got a bit over it after, I wouldn't say one or two projects, but, you know, just an array
certain
of
experiences.
projects, certain experiences, nobody specific, but just, you know, musicians are very light on cash and heavy on ego, generally speaking, myself included. So, you know, music is a very fickle art and a very subjective one, and it can be incredibly hard to please people, particularly if they have that kind of whole thing in their head about, you know, I'm going to be famous, which, if we're honest, most musicians do on some level. You kind of have that reinforced into you through the media, and you think, oh, I'm going to have a career as a musician, or whatever, and doesn't really work like that.
False aspirations as to what it really means to work hard at something, perhaps.
Yeah, that, and doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I mean,
you got to do it for the right reasons.
But it's hard to justify, you know, if you're just doing it for the sake of your own, you know, art, your own enthusiasm about your own art and that sort of thing. It's very hard to say, wow, I really like this. I'm going to sink, you know, $5,000 or $1,000 into going into a studio and making this better. You know, if you're going to do that, you kind of, most people want to see some payoff at the end of it. They want to get slightly famous or, you know, make enough money to make it back, and that's getting harder and harder and harder and harder and harder to do, particularly with Spotify and everything.
The digital realm of everything. Yeah.
So
I used to sell a buttload of CDs of my own stuff, and now it's like you get kids looking at you. Kids are like, "What is that?
Yes.
What is a CD? What is that?" No. It's changed, but also it's opened it up to, like you say, it's really a love of it. You know, you're creating art, and it's awesome. So, what are you doing in terms of your own sort of project? You mentioned what sort of style are you into?
Various. Like I've literally got a alt rock / metal album out there, a electronica album, and a acoustic album, all under different pseudonyms, and they do okay. So I pretty much have always just done whatever felt right in the moment musically, which tends to jump all over the place. Other people get it quite a bit more branded and a bit more focused about what they want to do, but I've never really seen a huge, well, for me that's just not interesting. So at the moment one of my projects is travelling up and down New Zealand and basically getting bush recordings, beach recordings, nature recordings, that sort of thing, and having that sort of as the backdrop for more acoustic-y type stuff. I've done a little bit of it so far, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think there's only, you know, I'm not anticipating every forest to sound radically different to each and every other forest in New Zealand, so, you know, we'll see how much variation there is in there to make it.
Interesting.
An interesting project.
That whole world of found sound, I believe it's called. Found sound. That's fantastic. And how long have you been doing this for? Like, what got you into music?
Well, I started playing the violin when I was 4. And then started, I mean, musical family, so did lots of music. Started singing in bands and stuff when I was 13 or whatnot. And started composing at high school, mainly on computers, and just kind of continued on doing that and kept on being in bands, kept on recording, doing vocals.
Yeah.
And yeah, at some point I kind of reached the point where I was like, I want to open a music studio. That seems like a good idea. I'm not sure why, but I decided to do that, and I did that, and worked out okay, and made some money, and blah blah blah. And I think the best thing, realistically for me, the best thing about running a recording studio is you get better, and you're forced to get better and do better faster.
Yeah.
I didn't go through the traditional training, if there is such thing as traditional recording music process of learning how to do that at one of the polytechs or whatever. I just felt, this was something that was interesting, and I'd rather just keep on being interested in it rather than it being something that I had to do to make a grade or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's worked out fine for me, and other people have come at it from very different angles. Some people come out of polytechs, and some people come...
Well, I did the whole audio engineering course, and I think on the third year I was like, they were like, yep, you've got deadlines and jingles to make, and I was like, I just want to write or record a song for the sake of doing so.
In many ways, studying art is a good way to kill your enthusiasm for it, no matter which angle you take.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can't box art into something. It's sort of the curiosity of going somewhere is part of it, isn't it? So
but nowadays it's all very branded. I mean, you've got to be, if you're actually serious about making it per se, then you've got to be really focused in terms of what your image is and what your specific style is, and you've really got to lock stuff down a bit more. To an extent, and then, as you say, it's kind of opened up a little bit on the web and Bandcamp and whatnot, and there are a lot of people who are a lot more explorative, and there's, because the long tail, and, there'll always be a niche for something. May not be a big niche, but, Yeah.
What are some of the projects on the web or local that are sort of really inspiring you, really sort of you're thinking, man, this is great.
There's a guy in the States, admittedly he hasn't put out anything for a couple of years, but he's called Field Trip. He's more melodic electronica, along the lines of Boards of Canada. I don't know if you've heard of them, but he's fantastic. Just a solo guy out somewhere in Texas. The Mountain Goats, who have been around for donkey's years now, but John Darnell, he's still putting albums out, and seems to be mainly doing it through Bandcamp now, which is fantastic.
I love Bandcamp.
Yeah.
It's direct to artist. It's amazing. You were talking about Spotify earlier. It's like, I don't get that, because it's not... You're paying a service for the platform itself, but what are the artists getting out of it?
Yeah, bugger all.
0.000000001, if that.
Yeah.
But, you go on Bandcamp, and it goes, direct to artist.
And even though the streaming on Bandcamp, they don't get paid for it, and it's free, even with that model, you've got the option to buy directly in front of you. You've got the option to support the artist directly in front of you. There's no way to do that through Spotify, because if they do that, then they break down their whole streaming model. So, and the ads, the fucking ads, I mean, Christ, they're so bad.
There is one radio station that I listen to in New Zealand. It's because it's radio RNZ, which is the classical one. It's because it has no ads.
Yeah.
I don't like listening to any other radio station.
And they've had a big debacle about withdrawing funding for them recently and trying to keep themselves together. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a good station. So, what instruments can you play? Do you play? You touched on you sing.
Yeah, I sing. I mean, voice is really the main one. That's the one that I'm most proficient at and most varied at. I also play the violin a bit, but not in any classical way. Really only in a kind of contemporary way, which is good. It means I can get very unique and unsettling sounds out of it. Guitar, ukulele, to a more limited extent, piano keys to a certain extent, and then drums not really at all. I mean, I can play the drums, but keeping time is not my forte for that, so, yeah.
you've been doing this for a while, it seems, and you said that there has been some stories. Without sort of naming anyone in particular, what's just that rock and roll moment of something you're like, whether it's a diva or... Is there something that you can share that sort of...
Well, I had two dickheads show up at my house and threatened to beat me up if I didn't give them the masters, so that was fun. That was... they were just kind of delusional. They didn't want to pay the bill, but they, they wanted the end result, and they thought they could intimidate it out of me, and that was kind of a bit shocking for them. That I was just like, yeah, nah, bugger off. That was kind of funny. Wasn't so funny for them because police.
Yes, illegal.
Yeah.
What about for any young musicians that are maybe watching this? What's sort of the best piece of advice that you can give to someone that's starting out or wanting to do something like this? What's the best sort of advice that you can give someone young and upcoming?
I would say analog is dead, and we can emulate it better than the real thing usually nowadays if you get the right stuff. So don't worry too much about that. Start out on crappier equipment because you learn how to mix better if you've got poor source material to work with. If you're working with, if you've just got an SM58 and, a really basic little box and that sort of thing, which, to be honest, is a lot of people's setup nowadays, that's really good because, you will have to really tweak things and modify things to actually get them to sound right and to fit in the mix and that sort of jazz. Other than that, I'd really just say do it for the love of it, because there really isn't a lot of point for doing it for another reason nowadays. It's nice if you're really driven and you want to get somewhere and you're really pushing to do that. That's cool, but the other side of that spectrum is it something that people want to hear? And you can't guarantee that. No matter how good you think it is and your mates think it is and your mum thinks it is or whatever, you can't guarantee that what you're doing is going to be somebody else's cup of tea, and you can't expect people to like that. I mean, there's some people who buy my stuff. The people who buy my stuff aren't going to be the kind of people who are buying, well, I assume, I don't know, maybe, but they are probably not going to be the kind of people buying Britney Spears and Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and that sort of thing. Not that I have anything against any of that stuff. But yeah, so the main thing, just do it for the love of it, really. And if you're mixing, if you're wanting to actually get into mixing, most important thing is to train your ears and to be able to hear the different frequencies so that you can listen and go, oh, too much of something around 300 hertz or that sort of general area. Yeah, that's my take.
Very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, this is a really cool studio. Really cool.
Thank
so
you.
I think we should get started in terms of this amazing space. And if you could please show us around, that would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, so probably the best moment of the studio for me was nothing to do with music itself.
Yeah.
But just a lady came in, she had this old cassette tape, and it was like her father had passed away reasonably recently, and it was her dad's old band. And, the cassette was just really noisy, and it was the only source material they had for their recordings of this band. So she just wanted a straight transfer, and, I went, okay, but, I took it, I listened to it, recorded it through, and I went, nah. So I did like full denoising, declicking, EQing and whatnot. Took me about 3 hours. I didn't charge her for any of it. And I gave her the CD afterwards, and she, oh, thanks, and she drove away. 10 minutes later, I get a call on my cell phone, and she's literally in tears, and and she says so grateful because it's the first time that she's heard the lead singer's voice since he died, and that was like freaking awesome.
Sent shivers.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you live for, really, is to have that kind of impact on somebody. It's not, it's not just kind of making them sound better, but it's actually giving some meaning to them. That's what you really live for.
connecting with another human story and
Yeah.
really, yeah.
Yeah. And I'd like to do more of that, but not so much of the pumping up people's egos and whatnot
the other
anymore.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
The studio, the first thing that catches my eye is sort of, it seems like it's got a lot of character and history behind it. So tell us a little bit about the building itself.
Yeah, so this is part of the old historic dairy factory in Matangi, and this was actually the first building in it, although it's obviously gone through quite a number of modifications. And initially they did, I don't know what they did, but eventually this was where condensed milk was invented, of all things.
Historic place right here.
And then they started, exporting that to the world.
Yep.
And then later on, the factory expanded and it became the cheese room, just where they'd put the cheese for it to sit and, become aged and decrepit and whatnot. I thought about calling this place the cheese room, but I thought better of it. And then, I think the whole factory complex sort of shut down around the 70s, that sort of thing, and then got picked up and various bits got converted into different businesses and that sort of jazz. So, yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. Please show us around. That was awesome. This is awesome.
So this is just sort of the main kind of mixing area.
Yep.
Nothing too much to see here. Just work.
What is this being used at the moment? The stereo mixer?
Not at the moment. It's more or less just for show a lot of the time. But occasionally you get people who want to use it because they like the idea of something that's not clean and a bit analog and a bit dirty and that sort of thing.
We'll have a look around here first. So the monitors. Tell us about your monitoring.
Yeah, so this is kind of my combo setup, which works really well for me, simply because the two different sets counteract each other really well. This one's got a lot of mid-end detail, and these ones are very detailed in the top and bottom end, but have kind of no detail in the middle. These Ultimate speakers, they're made in New Zealand in the 70s.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, and
nice.
I think maybe Tamahere, something like, it's on the back of it anyway. These acoustics of Finland, made in Finland, so I paid a fair whack to get them over here.
Okay.
And initially I was quite disappointed because I was like, there's no mid-range detail, and they're just a bit too much top and bottom end. And then I kind of joined them up in parallel, and I was like, holy crap, didn't even need any EQ over the output or anything. It just was perfect straight off the bat. These JBLs, pretty much I just use them as a secondary balancing focus, because these I find easier to mix to, and you can hear more, but they're a little bit flattering. So these ones just kind of bring it back down to basics a little bit and let you hear the unflattering nature of what you're doing, which is sometimes
sort of a magnifying glass of, whereas the other one's natural side of things. What's underneath the monitors?
So this is a modified, this is Mark of the Unicorn 896 HD, which I sent across to Blackline Audio in the States, and they basically replace all the bad bits with good bits, and modify the crap out of it and send it back. There's a switch box there to switch between the two sets of monitors. So this will go direct to those. If it's going to these two, then it goes through the NAD amplifier. Other than that, just got a Mark of the Unicorn ultralight if I need 16 channels for some reason. Okay. And just the Rode
That's for the
amplifiers.
Microphones?
Yeah, for the Rhodes specifically.
And what's that, the NAD, what's that?
That's just a basic stereo amplifier. But it works very well for this setup.
You got a project open?
Yep. This is just something very basic. So,
is this one of yours?
Yeah, this is one of the ones I'm talking about with like instruments and bush music, like bush sounds, that sort of thing. So fairly basic.
Oh, nice.
Just drop down the reverb a little bit.
Oh, yep. Have you got the Slate all-in-one? Or are you still
No.
getting them one by
No,
one?
I've purchased them individually.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've got really good stuff.
Yeah.
Slate is, in terms of emulation, I don't think there's anybody else who's
Really?
really cutting it as well out there as they are.
Okay.
If you want really nice, clean stuff, I really like all the Isotope stuff.
Yep.
And actually, this here is a little plugin that nobody seems to know.
cdsoundmaster.com.
Yeah, this is a guy who's actually doing stuff with Nebula, if you know of that stuff. But he does this.
Oh, that's the synth stuff, isn't it? The
Nebula's
sound module stuff.
Yeah,
No?
sort of. Nebula is like, it's too complicated for me to even explain it, but it's emulation type stuff. But he's done this stuff with tapes, and usually I use this one at the end of my mastering chain because it's just adds a little bit of roundness to all of the tone. Just turn that off.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, with it off, it's just a little bit more detailed, but it's not as round and kind of golden sounding, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
Put it back on. But it's just one of those little, very subtle plugins.
It sort of makes the highs more natural for me, because without it, it magnifies certain frequencies that are actually not musical.
Yeah.
Sort of rounds it off a little bit.
Yeah, and Slate's tape emulation stuff is really good as well, but
Cool.
It's kind of a different feel. I don't tend to use it on the.
I'm not actually
stereo
familiar
bus
with this DAW
program. Oh, this is Traction.
Traction, okay.
Which is a buggy piece of shit, but
Right.
but it just has this fantastic workflow which I'm really addicted to, so I can't
Yep.
really get rid of it.
No.
If I'm doing tracking and that sort of thing, I might switch over to Reaper, which is really solid for tracking, but has that very stereotypical interface for mixing. And to put it in perspective, when I first got Logic 3.6, which was back in like early 2000s, it took me about 3 weeks to learn the basics of it, like just to understand what the hell was going on. Traction I heard about through, like, I think EQ magazine or one of those.
Yeah.
I picked up the demo, and within half an hour I understood everything about it, exactly how to use all of it. And that company's still going. They've brought out a new product which has a different name, but it's essentially the same thing. But I wouldn't recommend using it for a studio at all, because it's never been 100% rock solid stable like Reaper is. But it's just got a really good workflow if you get into it.
Seems nice and clear from what I can see here.
Yeah, it's very straightforward.
Korg X5, that's cool.
Yeah, this is my friend Wayne's old keyboard, which I bought off him.
I love synths and keyboards. It's like my thing.
Yeah.
I'm sort of the piano player at heart, you know.
It's one of these early sort of mixed analog and digital ones, so like I mostly use it as a MIDI controller keyboard, but every so often, you know, you come across particular sounds. If you go down to the bottom sound, yeah, very kind of new age period of the 90s kinds of sounds.
That would go well with the nature sounds.
Yeah. Yeah, if I wanted to do that whole kind of new age, you know, ambient music kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I really like it.
You must have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
I actually saw one of these for sale recently, and I almost got it. Is it the Rode K2, is it?
That's a Rode NTK.
Oh,
which
sorry,
is quite
NTK.
similar.
Yeah.
Quite similar. I actually replaced the tubes in my ones because the stock tubes are not that fantastic. But if you put a different tube in there, they get quite a different tone and they become quite a bit more passable. Having said that, I don't think they're that versatile in general. I mean, the Rodes in general. they're very good on particular things, particular voices. Actually, really good as kick mics for some reason. I have
Really?
no idea why. Yeah.
I'm really glad that you've protected your investment, because I actually do the same thing.
Mm.
I don't do that, but I
Right.
always put a plastic thing on top just
Yeah.
to. No, that's awesome. Some nice guitars here too.
Mm.
Do you... I can't actually play ukulele because it's not.
This one I picked up on Hawaii. Let's see. Yeah.
That's awesome. This Frontier, is this... okay, I see. It controls...
Yeah, fairly basic control surface. So just if I move stuff on here, moves, that there.
That's cool.
And it also will sort of play back any automations. So if I just stick that on, like that, then if it's done it all right, then it should just play back the automation, and that should,
There it is.
yeah, should
Awesome.
move around, sort of thing. Pretty basic.
That's neat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use
Like
it. I don't use it all the time, but when you've got material where the volume is kind of going all over the place a lot, it makes it real quick and easy. So
And these amps?
again, pretty basic. I mean, that one, the Ashton, I don't have a lot of time for really, but this is actually hard to find. These ones, I think they're made in England. Little Ross amps.
Wow.
And they're tiny, but the sound that you can get out of them, like it's got like this tube blaster thing written on it. It doesn't have a tube in it, but you can get these really crazy grunge tones out of it, like something off Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins or whatever.
Ah, wicked.
So you can really kind of use and abuse them to get the sound that you want.
Cool.
So where are we heading next? Through here? Yeah, so this is the main kind of recording space.
Love this mic. The
Yeah.
Shure.
Yeah.
Yep.
SM7B.
One of my favourite mics.
Yeah, I mean, it's easily the most versatile mic I've come across. Quite low in volume, but obviously you can fix that with the right equipment. I've got
What are you using it on?
Cloud Lifter. Oh, you mean instrument-wise?
Instrument-wise, yeah.
Pretty much anything. I mean, it really is one of those things that you can use on pretty much almost any instrument. But I think it works particularly well on voice, because what I find with the NTKs, they're really good for doing some very basic stuff like voiceovers, and they're good on some female voices. But if you're using them on a male voice, initially when you record it, it sounds great because it's all got all these, all the tube harmonics, and it's got all this upper frequency sparkle and that sort of thing. But when you actually come to mixing that, it becomes a bit more tricky, and it's hard to get a really nice round tone out of it. You tend to end up with something that's a little bit more bitey, rather than something that just fits in the mix nicely. So typically I'll have that running through the Cloud Lifter, which is just pure gain, nothing else.
Okay.
And then running into the Auteur preamp, which is by Black Lion Audio also. I did a whole bunch of preamp comparisons and just really liked that one. So that's kind of a very hot sort of preamp. So it's got a bit more of a rocky-ish vibe. So if I'm wanting something clean, probably just go direct into the back of it from the Cloud Lifter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is this another NTK one?
Yeah, that's a second NTK. They're actually matched. Bog standard drum kit, although I keep on getting people wanting to buy it off me because the actual thing itself, it's all sort of 60s. The actual units themselves, aside from the snare. So basically, if you replace the skins and whatnot, it's
a pretty cool kit.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool kit. Yeah, and other than that, massive, big Jansen old, I think it's 1980s amp. It's actually really nice sounding.
Tell us the
Yeah.
process of soundproofing this room or
Yeah, sound treatment.
sound
So
treatment.
initially this whole space was just empty and didn't have any of these walls or whatever, and it was just a big nothing. It was just straight corrugated iron up there. So the first thing I did was just clean up the whole space and stop, birds from getting in and out and that sort of jazz. And then I started building the walls and whatnot, and eventually got up to doing the ceiling, which was easily the biggest job. I regret not painting it all white, but never mind. It was an artistic choice that failed miserably. But, basically what I did with the ceiling was put up pink bats behind all of that. And the reason why it's all sort of different shapes and different types of wood, different thicknesses of wood, is basically to break up the sound patterns so that when it bounces up, it doesn't all come down the same direction and it doesn't all come down within the same
Natural
sort of
diffusers
frequency.
kind of thing, yeah.
Sounds a bit more like a natural space. These here, these bass traps, took me about 3 months to build all 13 of them. They're not all here in this room.
Okay, so they're handmade by you?
Yeah.
And how
best
did that...
way to do it. So basically for a bass trap what you need is a very solid box, and then you have the back of the box is empty, that just goes against the wall. The front of the box you have some sort of essentially plywood, and then you have an air gap, and then you have a solid mass. So in this case I was using high density rock wool. And what that does is basically the bass comes in and it kind of gets trapped between these two surfaces and it gets absorbed by the high density material. But getting, you've got to get the right thickness of wood and the right gaps and all that sort of jazz. So it's very intensive process.
Nice painting.
Huh.
Who did that?
That's actually my sister's one, and she threw it out, and then I found it in a woodshed, and I was like, this is, this is slightly too good to be on the bottom of a woodshed somewhere, so I kind of grabbed it, and even though it's a little bit deprecated, fixed it up there.
Awesome.
Yeah, that one I got, it's a huge chunky thing and nobody wants to wear it. I really just keep it for myself. Found it on Stewart Island, of all places, down the bottom of the South Island.
Okay.
And it's actually got a really nice sound, but it's fantastic. Like if you stick it on, you just get the feeling of being like super enclosed.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's quite fantastic. These ones similar, just very old style, and then just some random ones. I did have about 4 or 5 other sets, but since I've decided to stop doing so much of the musician recordings, don't need them so much.
This one's made in Japan. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's wicked.
Yeah.
And this is your tea room?
Yeah.
And again, I'm a big fan of art. Tell us about these pieces as well.
This was more found out sort of stuff, so things, garage sales and whatnot, and things that other people didn't think were very good that I thought were rather interesting, and but nothing, no huge stories behind any of these, unfortunately.
Cool. That's awesome. We've got Josh running away. He's always, by the way, if you watch a couple of these episodes, I'd like you to play a game where you can spot Josh, the photographer, in the background.
Nice.
I've started playing that game.
So final room.
This is the final room right here.
Yeah. So
this is nice.
This is the isolation room. So when I've done bands and stuff, basically put the drums in here. All the other instruments go somewhere outside, and it just stops the noise from the drums getting through to the other microphones. But also it's a very good space if people kind of, if somebody's doing vocals or they're doing a voiceover or whatever, and they just want to be a little bit more in their own world or a little bit more enclosed, this is a good space to do it in. Yeah, and
it's a nice dead room.
Yeah, and it's
as
a
well.
dead space. So.
And how have you achieved that, basically?
It's a little bit hidden, but there's a ton of bass traps in here, sort of hidden behind all the high frequency absorption stuff. So that's the main thing. And there's this big, massive bass trap in the corner there. And then we've got a few reflectors here, there, and there's one over one which I need to stick back up. And this is just another sort of high frequency absorption unit up here. So it's a little bit, because I was aware that when I was building it that it was going to be a little bit of a cube space, I had to do quite a lot of work to kind of make it behind the scenes, like behind all of this, not actually a cube space. So make it so that what is here is getting absorbed for the most part, and what isn't getting absorbed is reflecting in, ways that are irregular.
And where is the patch for the microphone? How do you get it?
Oh, mostly it just comes in
goes through here?
Yeah, there's like a little gap under the door which pops in through. So that's
cool.
the main thing. And I've got the headphones cable that comes down
right
there so we can communicate with the main room.
Cool.
Yeah.
This
basic.
is a nice room, this one.
Yeah, everybody likes it in here.
Yeah.
It just makes you feel very calm.
It's very calm. It's like, you're going to sing fine. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Matt, for this wonderful tour of Soul Studios here in Hamilton. So if you are in Hamilton, this place is here. It's amazing.
If you want to do voiceovers or whatever, it's all good.
Thank you, Matt, for showing us around Soul Studios.
Cool.
Thank you so much for watching back at wherever you are watching from, home, wherever. Thank you, and this has been another musicstudios.co.nz episode. Please make sure you watch other episodes and remember to stay cool and stay creative. Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Find Josh! Find Josh! Find Josh!